And Philemon's been in the chat and he posted his blog post with all his thoughts on the Street Fighter 6 beta. I think a lot of my opinions about the game mirror a lot of the stuff Inful has said about the drive gauge, right? You start the round with it. It costs you bar to do EX moves. There's drive rush, drive impact. It's an armored attack, drive parry, drive reversal, which a lot of people didn't use a lot. And you lose this gauge for blocking any attack or getting hit by certain attacks. If you run out of drive gauge, you get burnt out for about 20 seconds. So you lose access to all drive techniques, take more blocks done from everything, and take real chip damage. He says, I think they've got a winner here. I believe that meter management is one of the most fundamentally interesting part about fighting games. It forces situational awareness in a way that many other system mechanics can't accomplish. This awareness leads to player creativity and moments of panic that allow for exciting games. Games like Street Fighter are slower naturally than games like Guilty Gear or Marvel. Everything else almost is faster than Street Fighter. So anything you can do to increase information density you have to take in, it adds strategic depth that long term, no matter how long you play the game, forces you to think like, was that the right choice? That kind of situational awareness is still difficult to determine even if you've been playing the game for thousands of hours. And he describes it like the unique grid system, which I think is a good comparison. Anything that has that big of an impact is really interesting. Like when you're in burnout mode, you have access to all the normal stuff you want to do. Even though I could sit there and use my normals, fight on the ground and throw my fireballs and stuff, like this little gauge at the top of the screen would make me run because I'm like, I don't want to die. You start every round full on drive, which means for the first time in Street Fighter history, you have access to EX moves at round start, and your first whiff poke will almost certainly lead you to taking big damage and being cornered. Any risk you take has a big chance of being punished in a big way at round start, and it also just encourages you to like, all right, I have all this juicy shit to do, and I can always just do it whenever I want. Because the meter replenishes each round, you can dump all your resources into a kill combo and not cost yourself anything long term. We are going to see this so often in this game where somebody's like, oh cool, this combo will kill, and they burn themselves out and then they're wrong and that person lives with a pixel and then they die because they over gambled. Similarly, people will be too conservative with their bar because they're scared. If you try not to spend your bar and you try to turtle up, you can often just lose your bar blocking or missing parries or getting hit anyways, which means that you can't just spend down to 0.5 bars left and then ignore the system until you get enough back. This enhances the excitement of ends of rounds a lot in a ways beyond just they did the optimal combo and it was or wasn't enough damage to win. Losing all your meter, the burnout state, is really bad, but not so bad that you instantly lose. Good. I think it should feel really bad to burn out. If you got burnt out in this game and then it was not that bad, people would just burn themselves out and then live through the burnout and then fucking go ham again and spend a bunch of shit and then live through that and then go ham. Like, you don't want it to feel fine to burn out, right? You want that shit to suck. My opponent has overspent, and if I level 3, then it means that they're like on 1 bar or something. That means they weren't gonna parry, or they weren't gonna drive impact, or they weren't gonna do stuff that I don't want them doing. I don't want them doing shit. I'm gonna spend the gauge so that they can't do anything. And if they do something, they burn out, which is great. Giving you access to tons of powerful tools and then making you pay a steep price for mismanaging it is a great way to reward creativity. Yeah, finding this line while also playing the neutral game skillfully will be hard, and there'll be tons of edge case scenarios where smart decisions become super fun to watch. Like, have you ever played Uni? You know what I mean? Where like you're in a match and suddenly the bar makes you do some shit that's like not what you would normally be doing. You have an extra layer besides just what's happening on the screens between the two characters. The gauge actually impacts decision making as much as where your character is and like what normal you want to use, like who you're fighting against. And importantly, it's not just decisions made, it's also when you're making these decisions, are they correct or not? Even if you can stop and think about it for a while, you can make arguments for both sides, right? You're like, well, on one hand, like I could have spent it, but like it might have meant this. When you have to sit there and you could form a debate club and have people argue their side about which is better, then that means there's probably some interesting decisions to be made in your game. Drive impact. I know this move is quite divisive. It's a 26 frame armored mid, and it crumbles if it hits the opponent as a punish counter. So important to note, it only works on punish counter. On regular hit, air hit, counter hit, block, you don't get anything unless you're in the corner on block, right? This tool is really excellent for a lot of obvious and perhaps not so obvious reasons, and I don't think they should change it for launch. There are numerous counters to DI. Yeah, there's a bunch. You can jump it, throw it, super through it, hit it 3 times, parry it, and most important counter, you can use your own DI as a reaction. When you block it mid-screen, it costs 1 bar to do, and it costs 0.5 to block. Your opponent's -4 with a lot of pushback, but they spent 1 bar and then nothing happens. Like I'm standing in the middle of the screen, perfectly chilling. This technique is not like focus attack or other mechanics where you can mind game people with fake outs like dash canceling. Drive impact is like you just do it. And like once you're doing it, there's no like changing course. Like you're throwing out this move. So you can and will train yourself to respond to this with can reactions in the vast majority of scenarios. Notice that GamerB drive rush cancels, right? Does a normal, still has time during this to see that this happened. GamerB counter drive impacts back, right? Look at how much drive gauge and damage Xiaohai loses. He lost 3 bars and a shit ton of life for doing this drive impact. Keep in mind, GamerB did a drive rush, so it cost him 3 bars. Then he did a drive impact, which cost him 4 bars. So he spent 4 bars, but by the end of this combo, he's already back to 3 and building. Drive impacting and being wrong fucking sucks. It probably falls off as a raw move to use in the corner or like a raw move to do in random places, right? But like it does have utility still. And the biggest strengths of the move are beating non-cancelable pokes and fireballs. And if like your character is poking with moves that are not special cancelable, you have to stop and think, okay, probably shouldn't do this too much because it's going to lose the drive impact. And that has an influence on how you play ground game. In the same way that like having a fireball means you can't just poke someone all the time because their fireball is just beating your pokes. That's another thing that's really good too, actually, is like, you know, a lot of people want to do parry drive rush overhead for plus frames or like combo off it, and you can drive impact that. Drive impact takes the place of what people want to use parry for, to reduce autopilot behavior in footsies and contain some of the stronger moves in the game. Yeah, with drive impact being like this, I think you can make the footsie buttons really strong. It's important to understand that if you do not have something like that's threatening, the game slows way down. One possible criticism of DI is that it will be a noob killer. I think that at a low level, DI will be the most powerful. But also, I think people underestimate new players and they think like, oh, new players are gonna get hit by drive impact and be like, there's nothing I can do. This shit is bullshit. There's nothing I can do. This shit sucks. But drive impact has a natural counter in itself. And when you counter drive impact with drive impact, it looks tight as shit and it gives them a combo. If a new player had to do like double quarter circle or like, you know, a fucking pretzel motion, if they wanted a DI back, like that would be bad. But it's literally just like hit the drive impact button. Much easier, I think, to react with this than like, how do you stop focus attack? It's like, oh, you just ultra it. And like, even if they focus backdash or forward dash, you beat it. Like, that's a much harder reaction, I think, or something for other people than this. And like the slowdowns and stuff and the clashes are really fun to watch too. I think new players will be just fine. Also, to the point earlier, that was like, this is a new threat in Street Fighter that you have to watch out. I mean, like every Street Fighter game has. You know, Makoto's dash is a fucking jump scare. If you can handle focus dash cancel command grab from Abel and like A Yun's dive kick. If you want to talk about unpredictable, fast advancing things, Street Fighter games have plenty of fast shit that goes flying across the screen besides drive impact. In fact, I think by comparison, drive impact is quite slow. Is it annoying to get hit by? Sure. That's everything in fighting. You know, that's like all this stuff. And I think where it's at right now, it seems about right in terms of power level. Drive impact costs 1 bar, which is really cheap. And I don't even think it's in my top like choices of meter spent. I would rather spend 1 bar on parry drive rush or 3 bars on regular drive rush or 2 bars on an EX move than drive impact 99% of the time. Other drive techniques. Parry. Yeah, parry we talked about quite a bit. I had a whole video on parry, right? Describing it as a block button is, I think, quite accurate. It defeats your high-low and your left-right, and it gives you a lot of bar if you're absorbing stuff. And you also cannot punish it. Like, while someone is parrying, they are not unsafe during the recovery frames of the parry. The only thing is you cannot move while you're parrying, so you're stuck, and you lose the throw. And as a reminder, you cannot parry a projectile and then do drive rush immediately after as a way to close the gap. You have to wait for the parry stun to wear off, which would be equal to the block stun you'd suffer. Perfect parry is a little different. Closely mimics a traditional fighting game parry in games like Third Strike. You have to do it within 2 frames of being hit, and you recover basically instantly, and you can just do whatever you want. Notice that even on a jab right there, you can do crouching heavy punch. Like that's a pretty big amount of time. I think parry ended up feeling to me pretty good by the end of the beta. It has some natural weaknesses and stuff too. So like Vicious was pretty good at perfect parrying the fireballs. So I would throw the fireballs and he would tap parry. And then because you perfect parry, you instantly cancel the fireball and you can just walk through it. Like the fucking Terminator. He's just like, womp, 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 womp. Like he just keeps moving. It's fucking terrifying. You see him just walk through the fireballs and not give a shit about the fireballs at all. I would start to throw light punch fireballs. It doesn't go full screen. And then he'd be like holding the parry and then he'd have to recover. Yeah, you can do perfect parry drive rush to try to punish fireballs. It's pretty hard to do. And I think it's spacing dependent. I don't think parry is something you need to guess with in neutral or guess with in general. You use parry when you just want to block something that you know is coming and like you don't have another way out of it. So you might as well gain the drive gauge. And in theory, you should be able to OS perfect parry attempts and get regular blocked or perfect parry if you're late or early. But I think it's harder to do this than it sounds because you need to take advantage of your extra 20 or so frames grounded by the perfect parry to probably walk forward. EX moves are pretty well costed at 2 bars. I think so too. EX moves felt pretty good to me. Being able to do EX into a level 2 was really nice. Drive Rush is the premium. It costs 3. It feels like it should be 3. Drive Rush is really, really strong. It does not need to be cheaper because if it's 1 bar or 2 bar, like the game becomes so degenerate so fast. I demonstrated on my stream what the game would be like if Drive Rush off of a normal is 1 bar. Luke could just do crouching medium punch, dash, crouching medium punch, and it would drain more gauge from the opponent than he is losing. And you have to reversal EX or do a super to get out. Otherwise, they will burn you out. You'd be forced into that every time any button connects with you anywhere. And also they could just 50-50 throw or not every single time because they're plus a million off of every drive rush. It's just ridiculous. Like drive rush being 3 bars is what it should be. If you asked me before the beta which system mechanic was too strong, I would have guessed neutral parry canceled into drive rush. I agree. I think that before the beta, I thought it was ridiculous. After the beta, I still think it's ridiculous, but it's probably fine because it's far easier to get stuffed out of it than you would have imagined. So it's harder to use in neutral than it first seemed. They might be relegated only to situations where you've convinced your opponent not to press. I think on knockdowns, they're really good. Most of the mediums are +1 or something, and then you can frame trap with a jab. And if that doesn't work, then your pressure is like, you get pushed out. Having it go from 0 to +4 or 1 to +5 on block is pretty nice, I think. It essentially just makes your offense extended by 1 move, which drains more of your opponent's gauge by them blocking and makes your mix-ups better, right? And if this is drastically more expensive, it might not be able to play its part as a nice counter roll to all the space control Street Fighter 6 has. Parry drive rush, allowing you to essentially cover distance and gain plus frames very quickly, I think is important in a game like this because the normals in this game are incredible. So unless I have a knockdown or I force someone to block with something else and they're scared of my buttons, which, is me earning it, then yeah, I think it's probably fine. The combos that involve parry drive rush after a high launcher look very cool and should be incentivized. I agree. I think parry drive rush for combos is one of the coolest things in this game. They look cool. They give you extra ways to juggle that you normally cannot do. And they're tight. I like this point too, that Street Fighter 6's drive system could be broken at launch as people uncover more about how it works, option selects, etc. But the system seems so easily tweakable that there's undoubtedly an excellent iteration of this coming at somewhere in Street Fighter 6's life. If it turns out that one thing costs too much or too little, or one thing is too powerful or too weak or whatever, because everything is tied to this gauge, you just make EX's cost 1.5. You just make drive rush costs 2.5 or 3.5. Change things around in a way that ends up making the game feel right. Maybe drive reversal is secretly incredible and none of us used it in the beta and it needs to cost more or less or whatever it is, right? Or it needs to be better in some way. Besides just changing numbers on frame data and stuff, you can change the cost of the drive gauge very easily to accommodate things, right? I want to say I think Street Fighter 6 is a massive control game. I like this starting sentence. Projectiles are incredibly strong, perhaps the strongest they've been in any Street Fighter game since ST, even though they are parries and no chip damage. A lot of people were like, this game has parries, how could the fireballs be good? And all I could think while I was playing is fireballs feel really strong. Guile Sonic Boom, he was like a boss character. The fireballs are all really good, especially Ryu has the Denjin fireball to instantly win ground game projectile wars basically, and same thing with Guile's Boom, he has the seal. You don't take any damage from zoning or blocking if you're not in burnout. You don't have to worry about that really. It's just your drive gauge takes the chip damage for you, which honestly, take my life bar, bro. I don't want my gauge to be gone. If you have 40% life but full drive and your opponent has 80% life but 0.5 drive, I'm not entirely sure who's winning there. Yeah, I definitely have felt like people have way more life than me and they burn themselves out and I'm like, oh shit, I'm winning. Every time you block a projectile, whiff a parry on a projectile that doesn't come, or they fire one out that's slower than you think, forcing you to hold parry rather than tap it, which is, you don't want. You'll lose drive gauge overall in the interaction, which is bad. Whip punishing is also incredibly powerful. Yeah, if you played the beta, you know that a lot of the moves have big hurt boxes that get left behind. And because drive rush exists, no matter how far you are, you can dash in and cover a lot of space. Rushdown feels a little bit weaker than the lack of plus frames. I think it's like weird because the offense both feels very good and also very weak at the same time. A lot of moves in this game are not plus. They're like 0 or slightly negative on block, right? So that means that people are going to mash on defense. And that means that like stuff like chain jabs, or when you actually do have plus frames, you know, you're going to gain a lot from those kinds of scenarios. One thing that's also quite good is just doing a medium. You know, this person's going to mash because you're not plus, and then just walking back and then doing crouching medium kick to beat their jab or something. And so what they have to choose is, do I mash a jab to beat another medium, or do I mash a longer poke to beat their long poke? And if I mash a longer poke to beat their long poke, their faster medium or jab will beat that. So you have to make decisions that are based around that, rather than in a game like Street Fighter V where like you do medium punch and it's plus over and over. Most of the time, I think the offense ends pretty fast in this game if you're not using a drive rush. And he talks about if you have to really like smothering, stifling space control to like Street Fighter 6 main pace of play. I do like this style of play. And I think this is going to be very frustrating for people if this is how the game boils down. Because if the game is only long-range footsie normals that are canceled into drive rush to whiff punish or fireballs, and the answer is like, how do I get in? And it's like slowly walk and block and land a whiff punish correctly, or you die. That shit sucks, I think, for a lot of people. People want there to be other stuff that's good. It's also why I think stuff like drive impact and parry drive rush needs to remain powerful, so that it's not just like good pokes and fireballs. I am not one of these people who's like, we only must be shinobi who have our 1,000 times folded steel and we battle in the middle of the screen in a joust of both intellect and skills of reaction speed in our footsies. Like, I'm also trying to see people explode. And I think it's more impressive to play that play style of defensive play when the game also has powerful offensive options to run you over and kill you. We all find it impressive when Justin Wong turtles with Minot in Street Fighter V or something, right? But what's even more impressive is when he plays Wolverine Storm Akuma in Marvel 3 and runs away. Of course you're fucking zoning people with Minot's jab. That shit goes forever, like duh. When you do it with Wolverine though, like I'm like, hold up. You need there to be good air options. You need there to be good grounded options that are fast. You need to keep people guessing. It can't just be one or the other, or the game will boil down too quickly. And all these good wide decisions we had based on the cool drive gauge and all this stuff will start to shrink as it's like, I must simply use my normals or die. He says, I think the corner is particularly brutal in this game. Yeah, I think this game, it feels shitty to get cornered because drive impact is really scary. You don't have anywhere to run. The normals are really big. Walking back is really, really powerful. A lot of crouching medium kicks and stuff are harder to confirm in this game. So catching your walk back is harder. When you're cornered, you cannot do that. And not being able to do that is brutal. And every normal that you block and every fireball and everything that you block in the corner is draining your drive gauge. And if you run out of drive gauge, suddenly drive impact will stun you. It's very scary. You also carry people to the corner really fast, as he mentioned, because you have drive rush and corner carry really, really fast into the round. You can just drive rush cancel something and just go ham. And throws seem both good and not so good at the same time. A lot of the potency of throws will really depend on the tech window, which seems to be rather large. People are not sure about how big the tech window is. I've seen some people say that it's really chonky. I've seen some people say it's not reactable. I have no idea what it is. Throw teching sends you almost full screen. But the big thing is that in this game, mashing is on defense is going to be pretty common. So throws are going to be harder to land for that reason. But whiffing a throw is so bad. It is so bad. It's also why, you know, those situations where there's like throw loops in the corner? Throw loops look scary until you realize that if someone throws in the corner and you backdash, you get to punish counter the recovery. But importantly, throw does beat parry, which is going to be important. And I think parry is better than people probably think. And it's also like in this game, the crouching medium kicks go really far, which also makes you have to kind of just sit there, and then throw as a threat because of that. I agree about this next sentence too. Command grabs will probably be quite good. I thought Jamie's command grab range and how useful it was fucking terrifying. Because if you try to parry, you get counter punish like command grab, which will probably be more damage. A lot of people will feel like, I'll just block and then mash. You just get command grab trying to block and you're like, oh God. So then you want to mash and then you get hit by medium into heavy into like, you know, drive rush into this big fat combo into like gotta guess again. It's very scary. Imagine getting hit by SPD and it takes a whole drive gauge. And the other thing is, if Zangief is doing parry drive rush into crouching jab and it is now +4 in your face point blank, you're gonna have a bad time. I did a lot of throwing and I baited a lot of throws because throw whiff animations are still big in the game and the counter punish is huge. They feel pretty good. I thought the combos felt really awesome in this game. Everything is really, really hard to pick the right option for. You can spend your drive gauge, so you can drive rush or spend EX gauge in your combos. Those are two different choices you have to make. Do I want to drive rush in this combo, or should I just spend 2 bars on an EX? Do I want to spend a level 1 on this? Do I want to spend a level 2? Do I want to spend a level 3? Do I want to spend an EX and a level 2? Do I want to spend drive rush and a level 3? Do I want to spend only a level 1? Like, the choices are really hard. And that's not to count. You have to confirm regular hit, counter hit, or punish counter, because all of those have different options that your character can do. There's also things like your level 3 drains a lot of drive gauge from your opponent, but like, you win this round. What about the next round? Don't you need super meter for that? It's a lot. There's a lot to think about. Instead of just going for your big DP punish, is it better to put them in burnout? I don't know. Like, this is something that people were experimenting with. Sounds like a math test. Train's coming at you 60 miles an hour. You have full drive and you block your opponent's DP and they have around 350 health left. You have half a second to decide your punish. You want to kill by only using drive gauge because the meter refills next round. Do you have a specific combo ready for this? What happens if you misjudge and you don't kill? Now you may be burnt out. Should you have spent a level 1 or a level 2 or a level 3? How do I spend my meter? Decisions like this exist in other Street Fighter games, but nothing as complex as this. And I foresee a lot of really interesting decisions around B&B choices that aren't simply dump your super and kill or just do the max damage meterless combo. Aggressive players will dump drive into their combos because they're confident they can control the opponent and gain the drive back, but sometimes they'll be wrong, and that will be exciting because you'll overcommit. And conservative players will overspend super to ensure kills rather than risk being wrong on the damage calculation, but they will sacrifice utility in the next round. And he says, I've also come around on their cancel system. Yeah, level 1 supers can only be canceled off normals. Level 2 supers can be normals or EX moves, and level 3 supers can be anything, including regular specials. So you cannot do special move in a super in this game unless it's a level 3. It means that you cannot do stuff like crouching medium kick, fireball, super, like he mentions here. It's not like a safe, easy way to do stuff like you could in other games. If you want to spend your level 3, sure, you can do it safely, right? But you need level 3, and that's a lot. I think the meter is one of the most fun things. Characters and animation. The characters are pretty strong in the beta, but it's hard to tell their strengths and weaknesses until more time has been spent on the system and the effects of the plus frame changes, throws, parries, etc. can be felt. You know, it's funny because, you know how the betas are. Everybody plays the first beta and they're like, every character felt incredible. And then the next beta, everybody's going to be like, Guile's broken. The next time we get our hands on the game for a longer period of time in an open beta, everybody's going to start talking about who's broken or whatever. You know how it goes. He says, I think Guile deserves a special mention, especially strong, given that his simple game plan can be executed to its fullest in this game, especially when we're learning. He capitalized on drive rush really well, incredible space control with Sonic Boom, Sonic Blade, and some very strong normals. Is crouching medium kick on counter punish giving him flash kick? Like, what the fuck? I also saw everybody say Luke was the worst character. Everybody made beta tier lists, which is hilarious. They were like, Luke is so bad, which is tight. That means I'm playing the worst character in the game. I must be so good to win with the worst character in the game. You'd love to see it. He has strong space control and good confirms, a +1 on block medium button, and it feels like he plays with the Street Fighter 6 systems well. I think people are used to how Luke is in Street Fighter 5. Capcom should take a look at his level 2 super though, since it seems almost buggy with how short the range is. Yeah, the range on his level 2 sucks. It has a divisive animation style. I've said this a lot, and I think when the game was revealed, I was like, whoa, this game looks a little weird, because Chun-Li looked so strange. I think her animations are by far the worst, unfortunately, because I think Chun-Li's a cool character. I like Chun. Kind of looks rubbery and disjointed. Chun-Li has some she has some weird looking animations for sure. Oh, that's standing medium punch. Yeah, she's got some weird looking stuff going on with her character. Overall though, I think the game looks quite good. Street Fighter 5, most of the stuff is like pretty good, but there's some like really bad stuff in there. I think in this game, there's like one thing or two things that I'm like, but then like everything else looks great. Training mode, I think everything I have to say about training mode is really positive. The star of the show is the frame data display gauge. I think it's also true. An easy to read data display above the gauge tells you frame advantage and how it's dynamically calculated, so it takes into account medias and spacing. The gauge tells you how moves are invincible or not. It gives accurate timing measures for how long buttons are held down or released, which let you practice, for example, perfect parries or just frame moves. It's funny because playing the Street Fighter 4 yesterday and seeing the training mode, I was like, oh god, I forgot how far we've come. It shows you the gaps in your pressure, since you can look where player 2 returns to neutral. You immediately know the size of the gap, and you can use this to easily test, for example, burnout pressure strings or frame traps after drive rush, and you can tell whether you timed a move like a dash on the first possible frame you could have moved or not, which is cool too. If you're spectating, you can turn the frame data on. While Infilament was spectating myself and Vicious playing, he could see our inputs and then see the frame data as well. So I would be like, is that plus on block? And he'd be like, nope. Or Jeremy was like, I didn't get my DP. And he's like, oh, you hit this instead of that. That's why I didn't come out. Like, you can see it on the spectating thing. The only potential thing missing is cancel windows, maybe a second small bar above the main bar that indicates when moves can be canceled. That seems possibly easier to use than the separate cancel window bar above your character's head. Yeah. But you can test this yourself simply by slowing the game down to 50% speed and try and cancel windows until it works or it doesn't work. And I learned in 5 minutes more about how Street Fighter 6 works than I would have learned in a day from older training modes. I also want to talk about the function button, where you can map a button on your stick to function. It acts like a control key on a keyboard, which let you press other buttons in training mode easier. You can switch the dummy's block mode from block to all block to simply none by pressing function plus a button without entering a menu, and it pops up a little display telling you that you're using a new setting. That's probably one of the big problems with training modes, having to pause it and go into the menu, click a thing, pause it, go into the menu, click a thing. Like, how often have you seen someone show a safe jump where they like do a bunch of stuff and then they have to pause in the middle of their setup, turn on the reversal, unpause, show the thing, pause, turn the block all back on? Like, if you could just function and map it and do it easier, like, it makes it so much easier. When you press and hold a function and press another key, say medium punch, it executes your mapped function. But then if you release the function button before releasing the medium punch button, your held medium punch button will give you a medium punch normal. This can mess up some recordings or spacing you're trying to test, and you have to be very careful in releasing the medium punch button before releasing the function button to keep your character from acting. Yeah, makes sense. Maybe it's something they can adjust. You can customize character-specific things like Jamie's drink meter. This is always good. You can quickly change where your characters respawn at restart. This is a common thing that training modes have, right? Center, left corner, right corner. And if you hold up, it usually swaps them sides they're on. You can immediately have presets for beginner practice like anti-airing or dealing with drive impact. This is also great. You have individual control over block reversal and wake up reversal and on hit reversal, and you can set to an individual move like jabs or EX uppercuts and let it play as a recording. You can even choose individual delay for each settings. You can set how often each recording plays if you have multiple active recordings. For example, reversal jab 75% of the time, jab with 1 frame delay 25% of the time. You can save and load save states to allow you to practice specific things. This is really good. You know, when Jamie does his level 3, he can combo after. Previously in other games, if you wanted to practice this, you would do the level 3, watch the whole animation, and then try the juggle. And if you missed the juggle, do the level 3, watch the whole animation, and then try it again. In this, you can do the animation, save a save state, and you don't have to watch the whole animation over and over. You can press L1 and R1 on a training mode menu and immediately jump to exit training, so you don't have to stumble through all the menus. And like normally, exit training mode is on the main page, so you'd have to like go from the page on the side and go all the way back. Setting health is done at default of 10% increments, but you can press a button to switch it to 1% increments. Makes it easy to test the little things. So lots of cool features. And one more thing that he wants in the game that's not there is hitbox and hurtbox display. I'm with you. I don't know why hitbox and hurtbox display is so not common. It helps you find solutions faster because when you're looking at things, oftentimes you're guessing like, okay, the hurtbox is around there and like the normal I should try to use to hit it or do what I should do is this or Y, right? But having hurtbox display on is really useful for finding specific interactions. It would also be awesome to have online training mode with your friends. Yeah, I think online training mode is also really tight. I would love to see that. Wouldn't we love to see that? Netcode. So I made a video talking about this. I'm sure he will talk about some of the same stuff that I talked about. His internet sucks. If you guys don't know, Infilament's internet is really awful and often connecting at high ping with lots of packet loss. So it was a good use case for the netcode. Yeah, his internet sucks and he's pretty far from me, but him and I played and it was great. You can see the rollback working in high ping, and I never had any problems with desyncing, and matches remain playable beyond the 150 ms mark, even with high jitter. Certainly playing anywhere in the US, Canada versus each other should almost never cause problems, and West Coast of Japan or East Coast Europe should be plenty playable most of the time. The one main feedback I'd like to give is to have the option to set your input delay to a fixed amount rather than let it fluctuate as the ping gets higher. Yeah, it's bad. Rollback, part of the reason we all like rollback is that it doesn't change in the middle of the match. You have a set amount of delay frames, and for any connection instability problems afterwards, the rollback handles it up to the amount it can handle. It works perfectly well even if different players are operating on different input delays. So if I have 0 frame set and you have 1 frame set or 2 frames or whatever you want to set, it works fine. And having input delay change in the middle of a match is not very ideal. It's really bad, I think, even if it happens relatively rarely. That said, the netcode in its current form is vastly superior to any other Capcom game and should hold up to the standards set by Guilty Gear Strive for rollback implementations by a Japanese developer. I'm kind of hand-waving this as if it's not a big deal because this post is long enough already, but really it's a nice relief that the game will be playable online. And if the input delay could be set before the match begins and remain that way, it would be fantastic. Please make it stop changing. Please. He says, I'm a person who generally likes to press play and be matched up with a ton of bells and whistles, so I really don't know what to expect from the Battle Hub, but after spending some time in the hub, I quite like it. The camaraderie of the arcade setting is a warm feeling. I do like that it does feel like an arcade and you run around and see people. Watching Vicious walk in, there's a bald guy there with like a black suit outfit and he looks really official. I was like, that's Vicious. Like you can just tell it's him. Hanzo Gonzo walked in, he's like in a pineapple shirt and looking hairy. And sure, I was like, there's Hanzo Gonzo. I know that's it. They've taken care to make the lobby pretty navigatable, and since you can pause and warp to any player or any location at any time, see an overhead map to find an open cabinet without having to run around, etc. It's pretty great. I didn't really like the fact that you can't control how long sets are on the cabinet. If there's a line, it's always one game before the loser is booted. I wish there was like 2 out of 3 in the hub. I think it's important for Capcom to allow massive control over how sets can be played, at least one of the online modes. It would be cool if they had first to one on some cabinets and then other cabinets are like 2 out of 3 or long sets too. If I'm playing a long set with my friend, hopefully it is also easier to switch characters than it is now. You have to get up from off the cabinet, open the character thing on the battle, whatever, and change it and stuff. It'd be nicer if you could do that too. And if you can queue up on a line on one cabinet while still doing other things, tournament mode, you are not allowed to do anything else in the hub while you are waiting, basically. I couldn't shop. I couldn't like look at replays, I think. I was like stuck. Random points at the end of this thing. Street Fighter 6 looks more complex than Street Fighter 5, maybe. I think that might end up being the case. Skipping the victory screen with the accept button and not just the start button. I'm tired of reaching to the back of my stick every match instead of where my hand is already rested. It would be nice if you could mash the kick button, like a light kick button, and just get through it. Search for replays based on skill and rank. Critical art is really not a big comeback mechanic, and it's no big deal that isn't one in their game. I'm not a big fan of one-hit special confirms off mediums, and Capcom's not doing it in Street Fighter 6, it seems like, which he's a fan of. They might change that, or it might be something that stays. I'm not really sure. I think having drive rush on crouching medium kicks anyway makes them pretty powerful, and they are way more powerful if they're hit confirmable into drive rush. I also like that back roll and quick rise have the same wake up timing. Instead of changing the wake up timing so that it's harder to meaty people, I don't like that. Also, this is an interesting one. Whiff specials do not build meter in this game, only on block or hit. It's also a high damage game. This is a meterless, like he didn't spend any super gauge. Look at how much damage that did. Also, yeah, Guile's sonic booms are easy. Remember when people were like, I cannot believe they're making Guile's perfect sonic boom an execution requirement. This is fucked up, this, and that. And then they're like incredibly easy, like so easy that people just do them every time, even without meaning to. I don't know what to tell you. We all knew this would be fine. Even if they were tighter, right? It's like, it's fine. The faces, right? I like the facial screens. I'm a big fan of the smile. I've been talking to Infilman a lot about Street Fighter 6, so I pretty much knew all of his thoughts before this got posted. But it was fun to read through it, and it's cool to have like a long form discussion post rather than just they get on the stream and they're like, what's up guys? What did you think about the beta? I thought it was pog and sick. Anyway, like and subscribe. Like we read this for like 2 hours. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff in there. It also gives you an idea about what the beta is like, because eventually, you know, people are going to be like, you know what the beta was like? And then they'll be wrong. Like people will make shit up. We have like an archived version of like what the beta was like. And it's like easy to just go look at it instead of just being like, I remember the Street Fighter beta in the Battle Hub. You could do all this, this, and that. And just like, it's wrong. What the fuck were they thinking? Did they know? That's what you got. It's just the thumbnail is Chun-Li's face with that standing medium punch. And it says, did she know? Listen. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna play some character in Apex Legends or some champion in League of Legends or something, right? And you look up a video and it's like how to 1v9 stomp as X champion in League of Legends, best build. The video is like a guy who like bought an account that's bronze or something and just stomping them with his champ. So you're telling me the first step is play people significantly worse than you and then make video content about it. Got you.